What's good, guys? It's Shilaken here. I'm going to teach you guys how to make a hoodie from scratch, how to pattern make for beginners. Let's get into it.
Get you a blanket, a blanket. A hoodie of your choice. Any hoodie should suffice.
Alrighty, go ahead and grab that craft paper, and we're going to go ahead and iron that bad boy nice and flat. Y'all going to be asking me where did I get this craft paper from. I got it from the Dollar Tree. $1.25, baby. Just go spend that. But yeah, I don't know if you're supposed to iron paper, but I do, to make that bad boy nice and flat for you to put that pattern down. Step one, go ahead and grab that hoodie you want to copy, and we're going to go ahead and fold it in half so we can first get the back pattern. When you fold, you should go ahead and fold the center in, so we're just getting the back side, and then when we get the front side, we'll fold the back end. Next, we'll go ahead and take that fold and lay it right on a folded piece of paper. Make sure this is folded. It just helps for a full pattern. But if you don't, you'll just have half a pattern, no worries. Next, go ahead and get your writing utensil. And what we're going to do here is trace around the hoodie. You want to make sure you leave a little extra paper on the out edges of the hoodie because that's where we will add our seam allowance. Here I'm starting to trace around the neckline. Next, we will trace on the shoulder. What you'll be doing is honestly just picking the hoodie up a little bit just to see where the seam is and then just tracing it. So I'm using a pencil first and then I'm going to go through with the marker, but we'll just trace around the armhole. And you see I might have to lay the hoodie a certain way just to make sure I'm getting that seam, but just do this as best as you can. Alrighty, so I finished tracing here, but it is a little difficult to see, so I'm going to go ahead and trace it over with the marker so it's a little bit more clear. Alright, so we go ahead and have this first back pattern. The next thing that we're going to be doing is adding seam allowance. So here we have the ruler. You can honestly choose what seam allowance. So you have 1/4, 1/2, 3/4, 1 inch. I'm going to be doing 1/4 seam allowance, but you know, whatever your sewing skills are, just add that to the pattern. So here, as you see, I'm just going to go ahead and mark little dots 1/4 around the whole pattern, which is going to be our seam allowance for when we sew. Okay, next I'm just going to go ahead and make this a full line. I'm just kind of sketching it out. So if you're a perfectionist, don't get mad at me. I'm just, you know, sketching or whatever. But yeah, I'm just going to sketch this out so I know where to cut when it's time to cut out the pattern. As I get here towards the bottom of the hoodie, I'm going to add a couple inches because I am going to do a hem. So I think I added about 2.5, 3 inches, whatever you want to add, honestly. Works out however big of a hem you want to do. You just want to make sure whatever you're doing to the front of the hoodie, you also do to the back or vice versa. So the pattern can end out even. All right, congratulations, you just made the back pattern. So now we're going to do the same thing for the front pattern. As a memory refresher, go ahead and fold that piece of paper over so we can make a full pattern with only half of the hoodie. We're going to then take the hoodie and instead of folding it from the front end, we're going to now fold it from the back end. You just want to ensure that the fold is as nice as possible, that the sleeves are matching up, the sides of the hoodie are matching up, just so that you can trace it as accurate as possible. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start at the collar again. First tracing around the neckline, then we hit the shoulder, and then down the side. And then again, if you do need to lift the hoodie up as you're tracing, that's okay, just to make sure you're getting as close to the natural seam as possible. We are going to go ahead and add the same seam allowance as we did to the front. For mine, I decided to do 1/4 for the seam allowance, and then I'm gonna add, I think, about 2.5 inches to the bottom for the hem. So I accidentally folded it a different way than the first time, so right here I have to add some more paper, but that's okay. You know, this is a good opportunity too. If you had to do this, add more paper, that's okay. Don't redraw it, just cut some paper out, tape it down, and you're good to go. So here I'm marking where I'm extending the bottom of the pattern for where I'm doing the hem. All right, hooray. We finished the front pattern, and now we're just going to go ahead and cut this out. We're going to cut out the front and the back, and then next we're going to go onto the sleeves. As we move on to the sleeves, it's the same thing. We're just going to first go ahead and fold it in half, and then we're just going to take one sleeve, and we're going to make sure that we line up the part on the shoulder on the edge of the folded paper, not the part under the arm, just the part on the shoulder. So as you see here, I'm lining it up, and then we're just going to go ahead and trace it. The sleeve, especially when you're tracing it, you might need to, you know, hold the hoodie a certain way to really trace it as accurately as possible. Okay, same thing for the sleeve for the front and back panel. We're just going to add a seam allowance on all the sewn edges, and then as we get towards the cuff, I'm going to extend it a little bit longer because I'm going to make a hem, so I just want to make sure that the sleeve doesn't end up too short. I think I added about 2 inches past the sleeve, and then we're just going to kind of sketch that out so it matches the slope of the sleeve. You know, don't be too shy, guys. Just do it. This is your first time making it. And then as you keep making hoodies, you know, you can alter the pattern. So if you want a wide sleeve, you'll just, instead of curving it out, you'll just straighten it down. If you want a longer sleeve, make it longer, etc. So here I'm just going around with the seam allowance so I know exactly where to cut. All right, and then for this pattern, I'm just writing 2 on here. For a hoodie, we do need 2 sleeves, so I'm just writing that as a friendly reminder to make sure I cut out 2 sleeves for the pattern. This is just helpful sometimes when you are using material that you might not have enough of, and you might forget that you need 2 sleeves. It might sound crazy, but sometimes we just forget the small things. So, you know, it's just helpful to remember how many of each pattern you need to cut out. As we open up the sleeve here, we see we have the curve at the top, and then we just see we have a slanted sleeve, which is going to be a skinnier generic hoodie sleeve. To move on to the last step of the hoodie, we're just going to iron out some more paper, and then we're going to cut out the hood. So like we did every other piece, we're just going to go ahead and lay the hood flat on all the seams, and we're just simply going to trace it. This one is a little bit more difficult with most of the hoodie being under the hood, but that's okay. Just place it as you can to make sure you're getting as accurate as a trace as possible. Now that we're finished with that, we're also going to need 2 of these hoods, but we're also going to add the seam allowance. So we're going to add 1/4 seam allowance on the bottom and around the curve. But when it comes to the side, we're actually going to add about 2 inches, 3 inches, depending on how thick you want the hem of the hood to be. So I'm just showing you guys. You see on this hoodie, it's actually a casing for the drawstring. There's just no drawstring in it, but we're still going to hem it so it has a nice clean hem instead of a raw edge. All right, so for this, I marked out about at least 2 inches. So 2 inches for the hem and then 1/4 of an inch for the seam allowance. But whatever you're looking for, you can add or subtract depending on if you're going to do a smaller hem, etc. All right, we're just going to go ahead and cut this hood out before we move to the fun part of making the hoodie. So at this point, you're honestly done with the full hoodie pattern. Congratulate yourself on making your first pattern. Absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. As I mentioned before, if you want to, ever make a bigger hood or longer sleeves or a longer bodice, all you got to do is just add it to the pattern and make sure, if you're doing something to the front, do it to the back. If you're doing something to one hood, do it to the other hood. And that's about it. Alrighty, boys, let's get started on the fun part. So go ahead and take your material, your blanket, whatever you have laying around, etc. Lay it out. And then we're going to go ahead and start placing our patterns down. Now, when it comes to placing the patterns, you can either place it flat like this, or you can place it on the fold. I'm going to end up doing it on the fold. It really just depends on what your material is, what your pattern is looking like. For me, placing it just on the fold is way easier and takes up less time. All right, just go ahead and line it up. And then if you have some fabric weights or something else, just put it on that pattern to make sure that bad boy is staying nice and still as you cut. It will just help you out in the long run. Front piece is done. Now let's move to the back. Again, take that pattern, lay it down, hold it down with some weights or something, and then cut. This really is the easiest part. If you know how to sew at this point, you already know what to do. You're just cutting it out and, getting all your pieces ready to sew together. Hopefully you guys aren't getting bored at this point, but I'm really happy that I'm showing you guys how to make this hoodie, because when you can make your own hoodie, you can go to events and say, yep, I made this hoodie, or you can make your friend a hoodie for their birthday or for a holiday or whatever. It's really just a really easy thing to make once you really just get your pattern down packed. Next, we're just going to go ahead and cut out the hood. So you see I just flipped it. Just make sure it's one hood on one side and then flip to the other side because they're laying together. Don't cut the same hood out by mistake. I've done that before. It just sucks because you might waste some of your material. And if you're using something like a thrifted blanket, you only have a certain amount of material. So no mistakes. All right, so we're just about done cutting out all of our pieces, and now it's time for the fun part. We're just going to go ahead and sew. So I'm going to be using a serger. If you don't have a serger, that's okay. Just use your regular machine. Use a zigzag stitch so you can make sure that it's constructed good. But first, grab your front and back piece. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to first attach the shoulder pieces of the front and the back. If you have clips, you can use clips. If you have pins, you can use pins. Just use what's best for you. After we complete that, we're just going to go ahead and head over to the machine. And when we head over to the machine, we're going to start sewing. We want to start sewing from a side that has the neckline first, not the outside where the sleeve is going to be attached. This just helps to ensure that we have an even neckline all the way around. And then if the sleeves end up being a little uneven, that's okay. We can always cut it or, figure it out when we get to that part. All right, so now both shoulder pieces are attached. And now what we're going to do is we're going to attach the sleeves. So first, just grab a sleeve and you're going to take the sleeve and kind of try to line up the middle of the curve with the middle of the curve opening, I guess you could call it. From here, we're just going to go ahead and start pinning the sleeve together. I like to start in the middle and then go on from one side and go to the other just to make sure the sleeve matches into the sleeve opening. If it doesn't, if your the sleeve pattern happens to be a little bit bigger, that's okay. But starting in the middle is helpful because then you can just cut off the excess on the sides instead of having one side be over off to whatever. Just keep it in the middle, so at least if you do have to cut anything, you're cutting off an even amount on each side. Now, when it comes to sewing the sleeves on, you can either choose to start at the shoulder seam in the middle and do it twice, or you can choose to start at the very edge. I think there's benefits of both. You know, professional sewers might tell you otherwise, but this is okay. This is a beginner sewing video. So on this one, we're sewing starting only at the edge, and then we're going to go around the curve. I think with this one, if you know for a fact that your pattern is fitting in perfectly, why not just do it all in one run instead of doing it in two? If you're a little hesitant on the sleeve fitting in, I would do it in 2 parts just so that you can ensure that the sleeve is catching and it's going to line up perfectly. Okay, for this next sleeve, I'm going to do it in 2 parts to show you. So we're just going to go ahead, find that shoulder seam, and just start sewing. So as you see here, like I mentioned before, it is 2 parts. So we're just doing, you know, the front part or the back part first, and then we're going to do the front part or the back part second, depending on which one you did first. I think this is a little bit more beneficial, in my opinion, if you don't know for a fact if the sleeve is going to fit in perfectly. I think this helps you to just line it up more evenly. And if you're using a serger, it doesn't look that bad. So, you know, just try it out. Or, you know, if you're using a home machine, a zigzag stitch won't look that bad as well. And we're just about halfway done. So the next part is going to be to close up the sleeve and close up the sides of the hoodie. So we're just going to go ahead and clip those closed, the sleeves and the hoodie. Again, this is an option when you're sewing this, if you want to sew from the sleeve down and then from the body down, or if you want to do it in one continuous motion. It's whatever you're comfortable with, wherever your skills are at. Next, we're going to go ahead and clip the curve of the hood, just so when we go to the serger, we can get most of the serging done before we finish up the hoodie. Here we are back at the serger. So, like I said before, we can either start right here in the middle, or we can start right here at the end. So I'm going to show you guys both ways, just to show you guys. As I mentioned, I think the middle, you know, you can control a little bit, align the seams a little bit better. So we'll just start here in the middle and we'll start sewing. All right, go ahead and flip it over, and then we're going to do the same thing. Now we're just doing it on the sleeve. So we're starting in the middle again, and then we're just going to go ahead and close the sleeve up. Here we are closing up the other side, and we're doing this all in one continuous motion instead of 2 parts. I think, you know, this is definitely more efficient, but if you're not super comfortable and you're sewing 2 parts is completely okay. Yeah, so we really just finished that up, and then we're just going to go ahead and do the hood. Just sew around that curve, you know, as a reminder, when you're sewing around curves with the serger especially, you know, just keep pivoting your hand a little bit to make sure you're getting that curve and you're not sewing straight and, you know, ruining it and you have that curve you just cut out. All right, the next part, we're going to go ahead and take some pins and start the hem. So for the sleeves, I just kind of freehanded that. I'm not going to pin those in because they are a little smaller. But for the bottom, I'm just going to go ahead and start pinning that around with a hem of 2 inches. Now, I know some of you guys are going to notice this is a raw edge that I'm hemming with. That's okay for me. You know, I'm just doing this just for the video purposes, showing how you can hem it, make a hoodie with a pattern. Very simple, but you know, getting into these intricate details, it's definitely what takes your work apart from others. So I think, you know, as you get into making more garments, you know, definitely try to clean up some things, you know, maybe put a bias tape in there, or maybe do a folded hem so you don't see that raw edge. We are now going to do the same thing with the hood. So I measured about 3/4 an inch, close to an inch. And I'm just going to go ahead and, you know, pin that in. This is just for the hemming of the hood, just to make it a little cleaner. Same thing. There is a raw edge on this, but as you continuously make hoodies, make whatever garments, you know, you'll start folding in and trying different things to make your work look much cleaner. Here's an up close view of how I pinned it in, and then I'm just going to go ahead and sew that on with a straight stitch. Here we are at the sewing machine now, so we're just going to go ahead and sew down all the cuffs, the hems, and the hood. Here I am just sewing down the hem of the hood. Same thing, they're raw edges. It's okay. It's gonna make it look a little cleaner than if it was just raw edges and no hem at all. All right, so we now have all the hems done, and we're basically about done. All we need to do now is just attach the hood onto the hoodie. So I'm just gonna go ahead and flip it inside out, and then to line up the hood, I'm just gonna line up the middle of the hood with the middle of the back part of the hoodie. You'll know the back is the back because it has a higher curve. The curve is not as deep as the front. And then all we're gonna do here is just go ahead and start clipping this in place to get ready to sew. To attach the hood, all we're going to do is just line it up in the middle of the hood and the middle of the hoodie. And then we're just going to start sewing. We're just going to sew one side down first. And then after we sew one side down, we're going to go back to the middle and sew the other side down. As we finish up, all we're going to do is just overlap one part of the hood with the other. So then we just get that overlap part like in a regular hoodie. We are all done, folks. Congratulate yourself on making your first hoodie, making your first pattern. Hey, let me know what you think.